for you, and today it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it looks like a good one. I think we're going to be talking about, which is fascinating to me, probably one of the most hated things in this whole business. You've talked about it. I would agree. When you hear the initials PMI, you kind of go, yee.
Yeah, we're biting off a big one today. I promised it. I've referenced
Yes, you have.
in previous weeks. You've often heard me say, mortgages are not, they're not the focal point of buying a house. When people are buying a house, they are interested in the house, not the mortgage. Mm-hmm. Mortgage is like a necessary evil, so I refer to mortgages as being hated. It's not something that people like to talk about. Well, if there's one thing that people are not, if it's mortgages they don't like to talk about, it's certainly PMI they don't like to hear.
Yes. So the most hated thing about one of them, not the most popular thing.
And you know what? It's just a feature of the loan. I get it. It is an extra cost on the loan. But it has its purposes. There are benefits to doing it, even though it never gets portrayed in that light. So what we're going to do today, we're going to give it a fair shot.
Okay.
We're going to tear it apart exactly like what it is, what it isn't, talk about it. And, you still might decide that you want to avoid it at all costs. Mm-hmm. But it's not the big evil monster that people think that it is.
The TMI on PMI.
Right.
And you know what? It's like we were kind of talking about off the air. Once you learn more about something, you lose a little bit of the fear. You can then decide if it's right for you or maybe a useful tool. I know you're a strategies guy, and you shouldn't begin this process without a strategy or without someone like you that has an effective strategy. And I know this can be a little part of it.
That's the thing. That's the basis of my entire approach to everything. So, you touched on strategy. It's something that we go back to over and over again. It's the backbone of it all, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason why for everything that we do. Mm-hmm. PMI is no different. Okay.
What is PMI?
Well, PMI stands for private mortgage insurance. It's a little bit of a misnomer because it gets applied indiscriminately to all forms of mortgage insurance across all loans. When in truth, PMI is only the type of mortgage insurance that is on conventional loans. It has a different name on others, but because it's not private, if it's a government loan, it's a public loan, it's guaranteed by the government. So it's not private mortgage insurance issued by a private company. It's actually backed by the government. So those FHA loans, USDA loans, and VA loan in the form of the upfront fee, it doesn't have an ongoing type of insurance on it.
Okay, yeah.
But they all have different names, but they all, ultimately, at the end of the day, they all do the same thing, which is they pay for the administrative costs of running those programs. Okay, and so. But let's back up just a second here. Mm-hmm. So I referenced a lot of things in that paragraph there.
Yeah.
So you asked PMI, what is it? It's insurance on the loan, so private mortgage insurance that protects the lender, not you. It protects the lender against default on the part of the loan that exceeds 80% of the value of the home.
Okay. All right.
So that's why it's only on loans where the loan to value, meaning the percentage of the value of the home or the purchase price that you're borrowing, exceed at, if you go over 80% or put down less than 20%, then you have to pay PMI. It's because there's a part of the balance there of the loan that exceeds that magic 80% mark.
Okay. Interesting. And that could be vulnerable for the lender.
So, yeah. So, in the case of a default where a property is going to be taken back to satisfy the loan, okay? Typically in those situations in a foreclosure sale, lender's not going to get full value for the home. Okay. If for no other reason that it's now tarnished by it being a foreclosure, because, you hear it, hey, I'm going to get a deal on a foreclosure, on a foreclosure auction. Even a house that doesn't get, let's just say, damaged or devalued in some way during the foreclosure process, because the people that are living in a house aren't really happy about it, and so not all, but some people decide they want to take parts of the inside of the house with them.
This is interesting.
I could tell you some stories about that. like copper pipe and other things of value. And then there's just well, if it's not I'm going to trash it for the night,
not
they're mad
take
at
care
the
of
bank,
it.
and just,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of things, So they're not going to get full value for the home. And so there's also a period of time when they're not collecting payments, so the interest is accruing on the loan. So the accounting on the back end that you don't actually see accounts for all of this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take very long to chew up 5, 10, 15%, maybe even a full 20% of the value of the property in these excess costs.
You don't even think about that
before you even get to the discount that's taken. So believe me, I mean, the last thing a lender wants to do is have a loan default. They're not in the real estate business. They do not want the house back. They're not equipped for it. It's something that they don't, so contrary to popular belief, they're not interested in your house.
Yeah, looming over you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Not equipped.
Right. So conventional loans require, and we'll just, for brevity's sake, we'll call it PMI.
Yeah.
Because that's what everybody knows it as anyway. All right. Now, as I alluded to earlier, it's on FHA loans, it's required on all loans.
Okay.
Okay. So you put down 3.5%, which is the minimum, or even if you put down 20, 30, 40, even 50% on an FHA loan, you're still going to have mortgage insurance on it. Okay. And depending on how much you put down, it determines how long the mortgage insurance might be on the house, and to a very small degree, how much mortgage insurance is going to cost on that as a rate factor. I'm not going to get into all of that because once you essentially just think of it as the vast majority of FHA loans are the high loan to value, low down payment.
Yeah, low down payment.
So the 3.5. That's
what I did.
3.5 to 5%. Right.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why you do an FHA loan in the first place. Those have life of loan PMI on them. Okay. And in some cases it could fall off in 11 years, but honestly consider that life of loan because almost no loans will stay on the books for 11 years.
Okay.
The average move is less than 11 years. The average time to refinance is less than 11 years. There's all kinds of things that when that loan comes off that it could make it start over. So just consider it life of loan on FHA.
Fascinating. 11 years. That's interesting. Yeah.
FHA has mortgage insurance. It has two components. It has an upfront component that you pay at closing, which is 1.75% of the loan amount. So think of that as an additional closing cost that you have on an FHA loan that you may not have on another kind of loan. Now, on FHA, that can be financed into the loan as a part of the loan amount, so you don't have to pay it in cash, although you can, but nobody does because, again, it's if you're using that to get the low down, you're doing because you don't have as much cash to put in as somebody else might. You're not gonna that's half of what that amount would be. So generally, it's almost always financed into the loan. And then you have the monthly PMI, which is what you're familiar with when we talk about PMI, is that monthly addition to the payment, right? So every month when you get your statement, when you make a payment, and if you look at the payment breakdown, there's going to be a factor or an extra line item on there for the mortgage insurance, MIP, mortgage insurance premium.
Yeah, MIP.
That's the monthly FHA charge for that, okay? And it's generally, let's call it 0.85% of the loan amount, so almost a full point.
Interesting.
Every year on the loan. So you take the 0.85 times the loan balance, divide it by 12. That's the amount of mortgage insurance that's going to be collected for that period. And it amortizes down too, along with the amortization schedule. Again, nobody looks at those things, but to get technical about it, it sounds expensive. Okay. Yeah. And as far as mortgage insurance goes, it is some of the most expensive mortgage insurance you can buy. But keep in mind that FHA approves much lower credit standards than conventional does. All right.
Okay, so that makes it
so that's kind of the magic. So remember, if you equate lower credit standards with higher default rates. And we were talking about in the beginning where you have the default rates where the lender is going to essentially lose money on that loan. Mortgage insurance goes to help subsidize those losses.
Okay.
Passing those losses off. Now, in the case of an FHA loan, it's a government-backed loan. The FHA insurance program, government doesn't actually make the loans; they just insure the loans. If the loan goes bad, they buy it from the lender. So those have a higher default rate than your average conventional loan.
So, yeah.
So the mortgage insurance is more.
It wouldn't be good business if it wasn't.
Right.
By the way, you're listening to HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget. HomeWiseRadio.com. HomeWiseRadio.com. And we would be grateful if you added us on Facebook. You can see and watch and hear all the shows there as well. HomeWise Radio. Thank you so much for listening. Okay. PMI.
So I said it sounds expensive, right? And it in the grand scheme of mortgage insurance, it is. But most FHA loans fall into those lower credit categories, right? Because they will accept they have a lower credit standard.
Which allows someone maybe with not perfect credit to buy a home,
Correct.
which is an incredible thing.
Correct. So it's a good thing overall, but we're just kind of tearing apart the numbers today to help dispel this myth about it. All right. If you look at what conventional PMI costs when you get into those lower credit categories, now this will start to look cheap.
Okay.
Right.
I like it.
And that cutoff is roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of a 680 FICO.
Okay,
So
680
just
credit
generally
score.
speaking, if you're over 680, I'll look to conventional first, and then at FHA. And I always compare the two to see which works. Because that's just a rule of thumb, like a general threshold to look at. But if you're down into the 620, 640 range, which FHA will take, conventional will take it also.
Okay.
But if you have that lower credit score along with a low down payment, that's where you start to get hit. And it's not so much that you can't get underwritten by conventional underwriting guidelines, but when it comes to if you're only going to put 5 or 10% down and you have to get the mortgage insurance and you look at what that costs, that's where you feel like you want to pull your hair out, turn around and run.
Yes.
And that would turn some people off because it's big.
And there's more risk for the lender.
Well,
right. With
and
each
it's because there is a greater risk of default with those loans. And if you look at it on a chart or whatever, it really starts to get hairy when you get into those lower.
But I know you weigh everything in that way.
Lower combinations. So that's why FHA exists. Part of the reason why FHA exists. So as a mortgage broker, I have access to both, the best of both. And also have access to the best in my companies. And this is all taken into consideration when I look at everything together. So I can mix, match, pull from here, move over here, look at the best thing for a particular situation and present that.
I love that.
So, but let's get into the conventional version. All right. So there are more options, more nuances with than with FHA, right? Because FHA is just that one. There's an upfront component. There's a monthly component. It's pretty much the same across the board. Conventional does it different, all right? So you can pay it monthly. So there's something called borrower paid monthly, and that's where you'd see it on the statement as a part of the payment.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also pay what's called single premium upfront on the loan. So a single payment that pays for the insurance, because it's actually an insurance contract that gets purchased and attached to the loan that follows the loan through its life.
Okay. Mortgage insurance makes sense.
You could pay it all. You could pay it all up front in a lump sum. All right. And there are a few other versions of it, but it will there is a split where you have an upfront and an overtime, but I just find to keep it simple with fewer options to understand it. But also I find you either want to pay it monthly or you want to pay it lump sum up front. And if you do an analysis and figure out which way you want to go, that's generally the way to go. Like, you wouldn't mix it up. Like, I don't really know a reason why you would mix it up unless you don't know which way to go. But, that option is there. But there isn't a cost savings. It's a what's right for my situation.
My situation right now.
That would make it more or less.
Yeah.
And honestly, most of the time right now, that's probably going to be monthly. Which for reasons which we'll talk about here in a bit. But when I said there were more options with it, it's because this works off of something called risk-based pricing.
Okay.
Right? So the riskier the loan, the price adjusts based on the risk. So the riskier the loan, the higher the price of the insurance policy. So what they do is they create, I'll call them buckets, but they're really just combinations of amount of down payment or loan to value and the FICO score, the credit quality, right? So if you have a lower down payment, which means you're borrowing a larger percentage, that's generally considered more risky.
Yes.
Right. And if you have a lower credit profile, represented by a lower FICO score, well, just lower, right? So if you wanted to compare like somebody at 740 versus 680, 740 is going to be dramatically better. Okay. Less expensive, right? So as the risk goes up, so does the cost of the policy, and it's those two things together.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay, so we talked about it with a lower down payment, with weaker credit. Very, very fascinating stuff. Risk-based pricing. We're going to take a quick break and talk about cost. Yep. What's this acronym? BPMI. All of that coming up on HomeWise Radio, HomeWiseRadio.com with Michael Miget. HomeWise Radio, thank you so much for listening. We hope your day is going well. Oh, do we have some cool stuff to talk about when it comes to getting that loan for your house? And this is show number 17 with Michael Miget. Can you believe it's been 17?
I can't believe it's been 17.
Oh, my gosh.
I can't believe we're already 7 into the new year. 7 shows.
Wow.
7th show into the new year.
You're right, because it was 10 in the last
10,
year.
Now 7.
Oh, my gosh. HomeWiseRadio.com.
Time flies.
I've called it the not TMI on PMI, and we're definitely cognizant of that. Pick back up where you were before.
Yeah. So we've been talking about PMI, private mortgage insurance. It's the most hated. If there's one thing that's hated more than the mortgage itself, is a mortgage with PMI on it. So people
you certainly hear that.
Well, every single conversation I have, it comes up, and they're like, "Does this have that thing on it?"
Yes.
Thing.
PMI.
They'll like kind of, sometimes they know it.
They
like,
know, sometimes yeah.
Right.
That would be me.
Or they'll, ask them like what they're going to put, like what they're planning on putting down. And you're like, just 20%. Like, oh, okay, well, like, oh, because I don't want that PMI. Right. Okay, all right. And that's a fair to start out with. I mean, it lets me know where their mindset is and how they're thinking about it. So, it's a good thing, but people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
You got to know. So, you got to shine light on it to know if it's a choice or not.
So we're talking about the different types, different kinds of loans. The fact it's, FHA, when you'd use an FHA loan, and that's life of loan. Conventional, it's risk-based pricing. So the riskier the loan, the more the insurance is. So we're going to pick up with cost. And it really just depends on where you fall in that risk-based pricing spectrum, okay? So if you fall towards the lower end, meaning more risk, then it can get fairly expensive. But if you're in the higher end, where there's less risk of the insurance company insuring that balance, it's not very expensive at all.
Interesting, because you're going to have mortgage insurance either way.
Well, if you don't put down the 20%.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, if you only put down 5% versus 15%, you're going to have higher cost PMI
Mm-hmm.
on the 5% down payment loan than you would have on the 15%. Okay?
Yeah. Makes sense.
For multiple, right? And there are multiple reasons why. Part of it is you have more skin in the game at 15 than you do at 5.
Yes.
So you're more, so there's less risk of default.
It's more calming for the lender.
Right, because you have expended more of your personal resources into it. You're more committed.
More skin
Right?
in the
Remember
game. I
last
like
week
that.
we were talking about commitment to making payments.
Yes.
That credit profile, that behavioral thing, willingness to make payments, right? So
Yeah.
a larger down payment, you're more committed to that loan. It's also a smaller loan.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that. So
Mhm.
it will be less expensive when you put down, the lower amounts. You have less commitment to it, and things like that. So,
Sure.
I mean, it could be as low as, so you alluded before the break to BPMI, that's borrower paid monthly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's just, we're talking about paying it monthly or paying it up front in one lump sum.
So that's borrower paying.
Yeah, the borrower, you're paying it as
Yeah.
a part of your loan payment every month.
versus
And
lender
you'll
paid.
see,
Okay.
right, and
Mhm.
that's a different thing that we'll talk about in just a second here.
Okay.
And I looked at a couple just to give you like an idea. If you put 5% down and you have a higher credit score, okay, so
Mhm.
for example, I used 740 FICO, you would have an annual payment factor of 0.29%.
Mm.
So you'd take 0.29% or a little over a quarter point, right? So that's $290 per $100,000 borrowed.
Okay.
So if it was a $300,000 loan, what is that? 290 times 3,
900.
little under $900 divided by 12. That's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $75 a month
Okay.
on
I
a
know.
$300,000 loan to only put 5%.
Yeah.
To put 5% down.
Down.
Okay. Now I know that we're doing math on the radio, right? Or
Man.
even if you're watching this on the radio, it's still, I'm not showing you can't, math is generally something that people don't comprehend at all.
Makes sense.
If you talk it to them.
I know you're approaching, we're just ballparking.
Right. And it still can be challenging, even if you're face to face and you're on a board and you're showing it there.
Mhm.
Okay. So let me give you another way to think about this. And the math doesn't work out perfect, but it'll get you in the ballpark at least. Just think of when I said the factor of 0.29%,
Mm-hmm.
just add that to your interest rate. Okay. So for example, if you were paying, let's say your loan rate was 6%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you had PMI on it that had a factor of 0.29%. That's roughly the equivalent of paying 6.29%.
Okay.
Loan.
I was
So
going to ask that.
a little
if
over
that's-
6 1/4, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Which isn't that big of a payment
Yeah.
difference
Yeah.
because it's $75.
6.0
So
versus
I haven't given you what
6.29.
right. We haven't said what the payment is overall, but it's a relatively smaller. It's smaller than the homeowner's insurance amount that you're paying. It's certainly less than the real estate tax piece that you're paying.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not all that much. All right. So now watch this. Okay. So same down payment of the 5%, but with a 680 FICO, right? So you have a lower credit score,
Yep.
right? Everything else is exactly the same. It's just, one time 3 years ago, you missed a payment on something.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, it's being reflected in your credit that you have a lower score.
A medical
Right,
bill, something. Yeah.
That black box of the credit, that thing we can't see inside. Black box, the thing on the airplane. That
Yes.
like the flight recorder data.
What went wrong? We
right,
don't know
right, the stuff
how to
that's in
explain
that
it,
box,
but it's
right.
in the box.
Only the FAA can get in that box. It's secret. Well, so is the credit score formula. It's just like that. But that factor is 0.61%.
Mm.
And these are approximate factors also. So
Sure.
different MI
Double.
companies. Yeah. But just for comparison purposes, well, it's about 2.5 times.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no, you're right. It is.
I mean, it's a little more.
It is about double.
Yeah.
Double with that. So that same loan, 6%, 6.6%.
With a
right?
60-point lower FICO.
Now, again, it's not,
That's crazy.
so then it's $610 a year per 100,000 borrowed. So you'd be at $1,800 for a $300,000 loan at $150 a month. Okay.
Wow.
So, it's more than 75-ish, right? It's double to 150 because it went into triple digits. Now you're kind of starting to pay. It like jumps out more
Yes,
on the
yes.
statement and, that kind of thing. But,
You know me.
It's remember that you kept, and that's with a very small down payment. Okay. 5% for a conventional loan is near the minimum that you can put down. Remember, you kept 15% in your pocket. So if you were buying a $300,000 house, that's $45,000 you didn't have to put down.
Yeah.
So would you keep
Scrounge up.
Right? Would you keep $150 in your month every pocket to not have to put $45,000 into it?
Yeah.
Right. See, so now we're starting. No, so that's the first step down the strategy path.
Wow.
That we're going to get to in segment 3 today.
I knew we were getting to
Right?
some strategy here
So
on this.
let's move on here.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the monthly version. Okay. The other version that we talked about, which was a single premium, and generally speaking, that's what you alluded to as the LPMI or the lender paid mortgage insurance. The lender's going to pay it. They're gonna buy a flat policy up front, so they don't have to manage this along. So they don't have to manage this along the way.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. So instead of paying a monthly amount, they pay it lump sum up front on the loan, and then what they do is they build it into the loan structure. We build it into the loan structure itself.
Okay.
So essentially, it's going to be a part of the interest rate.
Okay. I was wondering that when I see lender paid, I'm like,
Right.
oh, that's great. But now I see what you mean.
Right. And so
Putting it in.
let's take that same scenario there. The 5% down at the 740 FICO. That would be about 2%. Okay. Paid one time. All right. So if you think about it, if it's 0.29, 0.3 per year or 2% up front, that's about 6 years worth of payments. If you were to pay, the math doesn't work out perfectly, but it's close enough to kind of put this together in your mind. 'Cause if I say, oh, like that's another 2 points on the loan for the mortgage insurance, like, oh my gosh, that's like outrageous. I would never do that.
Yeah. 2 points.
See, but this is the exact same scenario that I showed you monthly. See, the way you present it and the perspective that you have to look at it changes the way that people feel about it.
Yeah.
Okay. See, so if I, instead of saying, and I don't do this, by the way, but sometimes in the industry, so I should throw this out there, that somebody will talk about, oh, you don't need mortgage insurance on our loan. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's advertised.
What they're doing is they're doing a version where they're buying and paying for, somebody else is buying and paying for that policy because it's got to be on there in order for it to be sold into the loan pool.
Okay.
It's just they're not pointing it out.
Their spin.
Now they're gonna sign a piece of paper buried in the other 10,000 pieces of paper that they'll sign at closing that outlines all of this. But
yeah,
I mean, when did everybody ever read all those pieces of paper?
That's right. I don't think I've ever done that.
Right, the disclosure is still there, but 2% on a loan, that might be like a half a percent on the rate, so 6 versus 6.5.
Yeah. Wow.
And depending on
half a point.
Right. So a lot of times that 6 versus 6.5, like let's just forget about PMI. That 0.5% on a loan, that might be the difference between me and the next guy, just because I'm more efficient, I'm smaller, I'm built to
nimble.
Compete. I'm built to compete. Whereas the other, like if it's another company that has a lot of infrastructure and costs, what I call big box retail.
Yeah.
Kind of like, if you go to Best Buy and we were just in one last night, a big gigantic building,
yeah,
tens
all
of
these
thousands
employees.
of square feet, all this, I'll try and find an employee in there somewhere. No help. No, but actually, this guy, he was very helpful. But there was only like 3 of them in this whole
But he was
store.
in
We
the
had to go find
geek
them.
squad, and you could, nobody out on the floor.
With all this product on the shelves, well, that all costs money. Right?
Yeah.
Versus if you go to the small store where, I don't have everything on hand. So if you're willing to wait a little bit, I can order it wholesale, and my margins are really low because I don't have a big building and an army of employees and all this extra cost.
Is that
there.
overhead?
Overhead, right,
yeah.
Right. So it's just, and now in that case, you have to wait. But in my case, because we don't have a tangible deliverable, you don't wait. It's just, you're just changing the channel. So that sometimes that difference could be the difference between me and the next guy, except with me, you might get, what might amount to free PMI.
Who
if
is
you
he?
look at it that way.
By the way, this guy, who is he? It's Michael Miget, creator of HomeWise Radio, HomeWiseRadio.com. And I'm your host, Paul Cook. I just wanted to jump in there. That's who me is. Him, me. So continue, my friend. You're nimble.
All right.
Your business is nimble.
Right. And so versus that same scenario, 5% down with the 680 FICO, remember that had the double the monthly PMI cost?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the upfront cost for that would be 3 3/4, so 3.75%, almost 4 points on the loan. Now that starts to get out unruly.
Yeah, I was looking at that number.
That is too much to basically bake into the loan structure itself. It doesn't have that much fat in it. There's not that much meat on the bone to absorb that amount of fee, so that is going to end up adding to it, and so that's when you might look at flipping over to FHA. Right. See, so now if I say you're staring down the barrel of 3.7 3.75,
yeah.
Now my 1.75 plus 0.85 per year doesn't sound so bad. You can finance the upfront on the FHA, and so it winds up. Sometimes it winds up fitting better. So there's just all different ways. There's just all different ways to look at it. All right, which way is best? Monthly versus single premium or lender paid.
Yeah.
Depends on your situation, right? So what's the big overriding question? Remember, we spent all that time talking about questions. Like, why is he talking about questions? Another question. This is why. Because the answer to that core initial question, right? How long are you going to live in the house? How long do you plan on having the loan? The math analysis side of it, if you're not going to be in the home very long, I don't want to pay a big upfront amount for a mortgage insurance premium that is budgeted to need to last like 5, 6, 7 years if you're only going to be in a house 2 years. Paying for something that you don't need.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing is that if you're putting down a larger amount, but not enough to not have PMI in the first place. So if you're putting down like 10 or 15%, so you're much closer to that threshold where it can come off. And so we're alluding to the fact that PMI is cancelable or terminates mid-loan. Well, that only terminates or cancels mid-loan if it's the monthly version where you're paying, right? If you pay for it all up front, that single premium, there is no, I paid it off early before you thought I would pay it off, so we're going to give you a refund. There is no refund on those. It's you pay it, you bought it, you got it.
Versus the lender paying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's interesting, too. You said it depends on your situation. And I thought as we pull back out here before we get to our third segment, you don't have to sit there right now driving or wherever you are watching and go, well, I don't know my situation. I know my situation, but not when it comes to this. That's what's great about you at Shelter Mortgage, and what you do is you're going to help them find their situation.
Yeah.
The thinking on that.
That is something, you're welcome to think about it and figure out what you can figure out ahead of time or whatever, but let me help you with the thinking before you make a final decision or get too entrenched in a decision. I can almost guarantee you there is an angle or perspective that you're not considering because you don't do this every day.
Yeah.
All right. And I've done it every day for a long time. And on top of that, I'm somebody that thinks about things.
Yes, you do.
HomeWise works in the strategy and things like that.
Mr. HomeWise Radio, HomeWiseRadio.com. You're going to have to get that domain name. Mr. HomeWise Radio. We'll put it on the list, very low on the list. We'll be right back talking about cancellation, termination, those type of exciting things, and what happens then. We'll be back. It's HomeWise Radio on News Talk, STL 1019 94.1. Episode 17 of HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget. My name is Paul Cook. We're talking about PMI today, private mortgage insurance. Now, I'm telling you, if there's any podcast, radio show, video show, whatever we call all of this, if to go back and listen to, if you have any questions, it's this one. You know what I mean? It's this one because there's so many great details. It is enriched with details. But I know also, and we do this at the end of the show, but real quick, they can get a hold of you and chat with you as well. How would I chat with you, Michael Miget?
Sure. You can get me at the HomeWiseRadio.com website, which we talk about a lot on the show. The mortgage website is GoShelter.com. And my direct line, if you want to call or text me, 314-275-0314.
Great. I just wanted to get that out there in case I forget. All right. Tell us more about your PMI.
So we've done a deep dive on everything about PMI, what it is, when you need it, the different kinds, different types, what loans it goes on. We've scratched the surface on cost just to kind of put to give you a sense of what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as expensive and terrible and awful as people think that it is, but if you don't need it or don't want it, why pay for it, right? And for some people, that's right. And so it always comes down to an analysis and just figuring out what's right, what is the strategy, having a big idea of what you're doing. But when it comes to PMI, one of the most popular subjects of it is how to get rid of it.
Yes. Okay. Canceling it.
Yeah. That's like, I don't care what it is or what how do I get rid of it?
Yes.
Right. Because it's, if I got to have it, I got to have it. Like, how do I get rid of it? All right. So we talked about FHA loans. Most of the time for the people that take those, they're using the lower down payments, the minimums. That is mortgage insurance for life of that loan. So as long as it's outstanding from day one till it's paid off, whether that's paid off through a refinance or it's paid off organically, like we just ran out of, like we made the 360th payment, you'll have PMI on every single one of those.
Okay.
It reduces over time,
Life
just
of the
like
loan.
the interest reduces over time because it's based on the unpaid principal balance, which goes down over time through the amortization. We've talked about that before, but it will
I'm
be
tracking
there,
this.
okay?
Yes.
But on a conventional loan, there are conditions under which it can be canceled and or terminated.
That's something I did not know.
Okay.
Which is great to see.
So generally, let's jump right in. A couple things have to be true in order to qualify for cancellation or termination. Main thing is you have to have made your loan payments on time for the last 12 to 24 months. Okay. So, there are, some basically, you can't have any 2-month late payments in the last 12. You can have one in the last 24. There's some of that going on. If you're in a situation like that and you have late payments, I mean, definitely you're going to have to talk to your servicer either way.
Yeah.
Because the second thing that you'll find out about it is that it depends on who initiates the request to terminate at different time points as to whether it will happen. Okay, so there's automatic termination, which happens after a certain period of time. So when the loan is scheduled to go down to the 78% of the value of the home, the original value, of that was used to originate the loan with, it automatically comes off.
Okay.
All right. So down not 80, 78.
And
all right.
So that's not the life of the loan.
That's not the life of the loan.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But it is somewhere on average. I mean, it depends on exactly what your interest rate is and, how much you put down. But on that 5%, so going back to that original kind of example we were using where you put 5% down and you finance the vast lion's share of the purchase price, that takes about 11 years.
Okay.
10, 11, 12 years.
That's right.
All right. to organically pay down to 78. All right, so that's less common, okay, because generally loans don't stay on the books for 11 years.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So even in FHA, if it was a situation where you had put enough down to qualify for cancellation on that at some point, it's 11 years out, right? And I said that almost never happens. So same thing on conventional for that. That's for automatic termination, okay? But that's less common. What's more common is what's called borrower-initiated cancellation.
Okay.
Actually, it's automatic termination. The terminology they use is automatic termination, but the borrower can request cancellation or cancellation.
That's a fun word.
Before it would automatically, by law, have to fall off. Okay.
Okay.
So then there's two categories of that. Okay. So just like on the automatic termination, we talked about it being based on the original value of the home when the loan was made.
Okay.
All right. When the loan balance reaches 80%. Okay. So automatic was 78%. You can request at 80% based on the original value.
Okay.
When it comes down. Not a big difference. That last 2%, it's a few months.
Yeah.
So we're still talking 10 years out for that. So that's the less common version.
The borrow-initiated cancellation.
The difference here, and the reason why I talk about this one is that on the automatic termination, that happens based on the original amortization schedule of the loan, right? The borrower-initiated covers that category also, but we'll get you there 2% faster. But it also allows for principal prepayments to count towards that number.
Oh.
So in other words, if you paid extra along the way, so your loan balance paid down faster, and now you're ahead of what the original amortization schedule would be, by law, the guidelines don't say that they don't have to cancel it prior to that, but the borrower can ask.
Borrower initiated.
Yeah. So the borrower has to you got to make the phone call.
Okay.
Right.
And a lot of us don't know that.
Or write the letter. Right. And so, right. See, so it's a situation there where someone could be in a situation where it could be canceled. It is cancelable, but they didn't know that they had to ask for it.
Yeah.
And they haven't hit the point where it has to come off yet.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So,
but it's something you can look at.
Right. So it allows, so it allows for principal prepayments.
Mm-hmm.
The other, and this is the most common. This is what people think of when we start talking about, when can I get rid of my PMI, which is based on the current value.
Okay.
Okay. So that's where, I've had the loan for a certain amount of time, and I paid the loan down. Maybe I prepaid the loan down some, but the property's also gone up in value.
Oh.
Okay. So if you want property appreciation to help to count towards, is it cancelable or not? Okay,
Yeah.
that's where you're using the category based on current value. You still have to request it yourself.
Okay.
The very first point, though, is you have to establish what that current value is. Establish via an appraisal.
Okay.
Okay. So you'd contact your servicer. You tell them what you want to do. They order. There's a specific process that goes through. Okay. So when a conventional loan is being serviced, it's being serviced in Fannie or Freddie's servicing system. They would initiate that request via that system, and so Fannie Mae goes out and it does its own appraisal calculations inside. It does.
Okay.
And then it will also, but you're still going to have to order an appraisal.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah. If it gets to the point where there's some nuances to this. Let's just leave it at you're going to establish what current value.
Can you do this earlier than the 11 years?
Oh yeah.
It could be in 5 years. So let's just say that property rises quickly.
Well, right. So point number 2 is there are seasoning rules with it.
Oh, okay.
So generally speaking, it's
read the sheet,
right,
Paul.
It's okay. It's a minimum of 2 years.
Oh.
Generally speaking. All right. So 0 to 2 years, you need to keep, you've got it on there.
Okay. Yeah.
At the 2 to 5 year mark, you have to eclipse the 75%
of the
loan to
loan.
value, right? Or 25% equity. So not 78, not 80,
Yeah.
but you got to get down to 75.
Okay.
All right. That's kind of tough
Yeah.
in 2 years. 3 is easier than 2, 4 is easier than 3. But when you get within 5 years, if you put the minimum down, it's going to be tough to pay down, and you haven't made principal prepayments. It's going to be tough to appreciate out of that. You might
Appreciate out.
You would need
within 5
would
years.
need above historical average
Sure.
amounts to appreciate out of that.
You did a great job on your location.
Right. When you
Somehow.
hit the 5-year mark, that's when it becomes 80%.
Okay.
Okay. And so it takes about, on average, if we're using average appreciation, I think I use 3%. And I know the historical average.
Is that about average?
Well, it depends. Remember, it's area by area. But
Sure.
generally speaking, it's closer to 3. It's actually closer to 4, but I always try to be more conservative.
Mm-hmm.
It takes about 5 years to appreciate out on a 5% down loan.
Okay.
Right. So these shorter periods come in. Well, what if I put 10 down? Well, you're closer to getting out of it.
Getting to that
Put 15
80%.
down, right? If you put 15 down, well, you're even closer, right? So, but you're still, if you're going to rely on appreciation, current value to get out, you've got that 2-year mark. The only exception that there is to the 2-year mark is if you had made improvements. To the basis of the property.
Updates.
And those improvements are the basis for the value increase. And then those become part of the price of the home. Like from a
Yeah, right.
when
You're putting
thinking about
value
that,
in
right?
there.
So yeah. So just generally speaking, what you should take away from this is, because people want to know, home's going to go up. I'm going to pay the loan down. How long does it take? At 5%, it's about 5 years on average. Could be a little bit sooner. Might take a little bit longer. If you put more than that down, it can be less.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to ask.
But there's
You know.
definitely smart
So
ways to
that's
do
right.
it based on your situation.
Right. So you hear me harp about HomeBot a lot,
Yeah.
right? Knowing what your home value is. Well, this is one of the times when it's helpful to know what HomeBot is.
Yeah. What is HomeBot?
Well, it's where you can go get your home value,
It's really cool.
right? So you can go to HomeWiseRadio.com. There's a little card on there that you click and takes you through, and you put your address in there, and it'll give you your home value. It's free. You can get it through me.
You said it. Free. HomeWiseRadio.com.
Right?
Yes. I mean,
Yep.
it does some really cool stuff, even more than that.
So, and I know most people can't do their own amortization schedules
Yes.
and things like that. If you go to my mortgage website, GoShelter.com, I've got a mortgage calculator on there.
Yeah.
And it will produce that. It'll produce that amortization schedule for you on there also.
Really?
So you use HomeBot to get the value. It's going to ask you for what the home value is. So then you would know where you're at, that compared to the loan pay down. If you put your loan information in there, you can probably do it on your own, but if you need help or want to talk, you know how to get a hold of me. 314-275-0314.
And you actually pick the phone up.
Yeah.
Pick the phone up. I know. The guy on the radio,
It'll
on
ring
the
right
TV
here. If you
show.
called me right now, it would ring.
And I would be upset. I would throw a fit.
I wouldn't
Why
be able
didn't
to
you
answer it
put
right
it on Buzz,
Because I'm
Mike?
busy, but
Come on. Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to put someone, I got to answer it. Well, thank you for explaining that and making it make sense. I mean, PMI.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget. We thank you so much for listening. And, check us out, HomeWiseRadio.com, on all the different resources. And GoShelter.com. Check Mike out and talk to him. He's a unique, exceptional guy in this business, gifted at doing it, and you'll see why. So just give him a call. I'm Paul Cook. Thanks so much for listening today. Loan and loan information provided by Michael Miget, NMLS number 205402, and Shelter Mortgage, Inc., 691 Trade Center Boulevard, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63005, NMLS number 192609, a Missouri residential mortgage licensee.